Well, so it's about time we get these front coilovers on. So I've got a couple of things I've got to address. I've still got to make up that brake line for the passenger side. Going to get the driver's side shock on now. And then we're going to strip down the wishbones, replace the ball joints, get on with getting this front end back together. So as usual, getting to stripping down these wishbones, just giving them a quick blast off. And we're using brand new ball joints, the same ball joints that we used on my red GSI. This time obviously we went down to extreme levels of lacquering them and all that stuff, but we're just going to paint up this wishbone, slap some protection on it, and then drill these out. Drill these as we done last time with the rivets, get them rid of them. 8mm and a 10mm I normally put through them. Stick some new ball joints on. This one's shot. I'll spin it over, show you. This ball joint's knackered, absolutely knackered. You can see it's leaking all sorts, really loose. The other wishbone, just got to clean this one up, but it's actually pretty solid. I remember replacing this one for a proper GM item at one point, but this one hadn't been replaced, so that's why. So luckily these rivets have already got like a divot in them that's already been punched right in the centre of them, so they're a lot easier to just centralise the drill and get them drilled out than having to measure it all out and punch them first. That's another wishbone strip down, so I just took the ball joint all out of it, drilled the rivets out. So one thing I need to emphasise though while we're on this subject is make sure that when you do this, you go through it and take your time. Do not elongate these M8 holes. If you do, and then you put a ball joint in, they're only held in by bolts, you see. And if you hit a speed hump, a pothole, and you've got an elongated hole, then it's going to knock the ball joint at an awkward angle or out, and it's going to change the tracking, change the camber. So make sure that you drill them out, take your time, do them properly, and they'll be sweet. So I'm just quickly stripping down the other wishbone now with the usual knot wheel. No need to do anything special on this one, just get rid of any of the corrosion off it, quickly give it a lick of paint, get the ball joints changed. So I've removed the poly bushes out of it. If you're getting these poly bushes now from new, when I got these they weren't available, get the black series, don't go for these purple ones. It's just the fact that the black series is so much better. If you're uprating them anyway, you don't really care about comfort and all that lot. You just want to go as fast as you can, corner as hard as you can. So go for the black series. I was really impressed with the rear beam bushes. So let's talk safety quickly. It's something that we don't really talk about, but I'm going to quickly run you through it. Whenever you're stripping down with one of them knot wheels, they are nasty. You always use a pair of ear defenders. I never used to until my ears were ringing when I was sitting in bed at night. Definitely get yourself some glasses. I've got tons of pairs of these. I keep renewing them all the time. Get yourself a mask. All that rust and grit and dirt, you don't want it in your lungs. I used to do it without it and I'd be coughing all night. Even just a dust mask like this one with a number 3, I think it's PP3. That's protects you against any harmful dust. And use some gloves. Use welding gloves like these or other pairs of thick gloves. I'm going to show you a quick clip now of what happens when you try doing it in normal jogging bottoms with a big nasty knot wheel. And I went out on a bike ride, done a big bike ride, come back, thought my legs are hurting a little bit. I'm going to enter that clip now, see who's squeamish enough to watch it. Doesn't seem like it wants to come out very much. There you go. No, but look at that. So I weren't even going to change this ball joint. When I took it off, I realised it's absolutely fine. I didn't long replace this, and these rivets ain't flat like the other ones, so I've got to grind them flat and drill them out. You can see the ball joint is absolutely mint. I was just going to paint it up, but while I've got the other ball joint, the brand new ones, I might as well do the both of them while they're off. So the best thing to do with them dome shaped rivets like that is just grind them flat, and that way you can just centre punch them and then drill them out properly, because if they've got the dome on the top, there's no way you get the drill bit on it. So what I tend to do with these rivets is I drill through with a 5mm high carbon drill bit first. Go for 3 or 4mm and they'll snap when you put any pressure on them. Go for 6 or 7mm and it takes forever to go through them. So I've found that 5mm is the best. And when you're doing it, you want to make sure you keep the drill bit cool, otherwise you're going to burn the tip out really quickly. These drill bits, the high carbon bits, are actually quite expensive. So also don't do it at any sort of speed. Ideally be on a pillar drill, but I ain't got one in here at the minute. So this is sort of the speed that you want to be going at. Any more than that, it's just going to burn out the drill bit. Don't think of going through it at 100 mile an hour. These rivets are all high tensile steel, so they're high carbon, very, very strong bolts. That's another one done, so we're going to get a lick of paint on that now. I'll show you why it's the importance of drilling through these rivets centrally, because if you go on the outside of them, you're going to damage it. So you can see pretty much perfectly dead center, and then you can just literally tap them out after that. And you can see, like, literally just take them perfect center and then just smash the heads off, tap them through, easy enough. So I just quickly went over the hubs, wire brushed them down, blasted them off, got all the corrosion off them, and went over it with my chassis paint. I've put a really thin coat on, and it's brushed on, as you can see, there's the brush. It's very, very hard to get any brush marks in this. This stuff is so good, and that is the thinnest I could put it on. I've literally just dabbed it on, just because I want it to dry like very quickly. If you put it on too thick, it takes a long while to dry. It probably won't be dry till tomorrow. Also, I've just painted up the wishbones. I've only put one coat on this, but I'm going to put another coat on it quickly. This stuff, this paint I use for this is really tough. I've used, as you know, every paint under the sun. And when I want to do a quick job and I don't want to get the gun out and use 2K paint, I'll show you this paint that I use. Very cheap, but it's so tough. If you put 3 or 4 or 5 coats on, it's like powder coat. And it doesn't let any corrosion in, and these wishbones will stay rust free for a while. So this is the paint I'm talking about. It's a Pro Coat, and it's an industrial paint, so it's like a trade paint. You'll probably be able to find it, I don't know, online or somewhere. I'll get it from trade, but it's only cheap. You know, 500ml, I think it's like £5.50. Can't go wrong. It's a 1K paint. It's like acrylic. I don't know if it's acrylic, I'm not sure. Most of them are. But it's such a tough paint. If you want to have some protection on your chassis and you don't want to wait for it to dry, if you're painting iron like this, then you don't want to use this, because iron just loves to rust. So use some chassis paint, but things like wishbones and that, they're already powder coated, they're already protected. Just go over it with this. I always use some etch primer first. I normally use Opel stuff because it's brilliant. So let's get these wishbones back built up again, get the bushes and that in them, out with the old, even though that one's alright. That's the one that ain't knackered, but get these new ones on. Nice high tensile bolts, 10.9 tensile. Got some new washers and that for them as well, new pinch bolt. So just a case of bolting these in, you don't need to see it. They just literally bolt in like that. And you can see why it's important not to damage these holes up, because they match perfectly with the holes in there and it centralises them properly. So when you do these bolts up on these, proper crank on them. I use 2 breaker bars with a 13mm socket, that's what they are. And I proper crank on them, because I don't want to hit a pothole, hit a bump, and then these move. I know it's only a couple mil movement, but it will throw out the tracking. So proper crank on them. Ideally, I'd like to weld them, but you can't weld these bolts because they're tensile bolts. They're heat treated, you can't weld them. So before I build these up, that's the part number for these Delphi ball joints. Highly recommend these, either that or TRW. Right, so that's both of the wishbones built up now. When you do these bushes, make sure you put loads of grease on them. You don't want them seizing up. When they start seizing up, they start tearing up. So bushes are all done, ball joints are all done. Get these back on the car. Give this CV joint a little lick of paint as well because it was looking crusty. So this is a debate me and my mates have. If you're into ice creams, what's your favourite Magnum? So mine is the mint, but it's shortly followed by the classic. I've got all the different ones in here, almond, white ones, all sorts. So what's your favourite ice cream? So I've just banged the coil over on quickly. I just wanted to show you what I meant about the top mounts on these cars. If you do these up properly, you can see there's no, you can see how crushed down they are. There is no play in that top mount at all. No matter how much movement you do on the coilover, and the coilover is as solid as a rock up there. So I like to put a little bit of copper grease in between the subframe as well. Not only does it allow you to slide these wishbones in a lot easier, but it also stops them seizing up and squeaking over time. It's nothing worse than like squeaky bush. So let's get to getting these inner tie rods on now. So you see these in the red GSI, they're exactly the same ones. That's the part number from JIR 957. So they fit a lot of different cars. You can see how thick they are. The reason I like them so much is they're so strong. You've got the hex nut thing there to adjust the tie rods. And you've got brand new bellows that come with them and the whole fitting kit. So you don't just get nothing in them, like you don't just get the inner tie rods, you get the whole fitting kit. Brand new nuts, brand new washers, brand new clips for the bellows, rubbers for the steering rack. And I always recommend red Loctite. Stick some red Loctite on in there, and that way you have no issues with them coming undone, especially when they're tracking. Some people that track cars, they've done it in the past to me, they haven't held on to the inner tie rod. They've tried undoing the outer tie rod and it's undone the steering rack. What I do when I'm going to do these inner tie rods, I turn the steering rack so that it pulls it out as far as possible, because otherwise you can't do up the nut on the tie rod, and then just give it a quick clean over, get any of the grit, any of the nasty stuff that's been building up over the years that have gone inside the bellow, especially if you had a bellow that had been torn. So you can see now the steering rack's fully extended. That way I can do it up with the spanner through here. Otherwise, if it's all the way inside here, you won't be able to do it because the subframe's in the way. So remember, stick a bit of red Loctite around the threads. Don't want it coming undone. And see how it makes it so much easier when the rack's at that angle. So obviously it's a lot easier to do it when the wishbone's off, but most people ain't going to have the wishbone off, so I thought I'd show you the way I do it. So as long as you move the rack to that position, you do it up nice and tight, you can have no issue, especially if you Loctite it. So also make sure you replace these rubbers. These rubbers, they go round there on the steering rack, and then that way you can put the bellows and it grips to it nicely, because the bellows are hard plastic and they've got nothing to grip up against. You can do this when the arms are off, but it's easy enough. I use a bit of silicone grease. Right, so get your bellow. This is what these are called, steering rack bellows, and get yourself a bit of silicone grease. Just rub it around the inside edge. Just makes it go over the rubber of the steering rack a little bit easier. Do the same in this side as well, and you can just slot it over the top. I'm doing it this way, so it's most people are not going to have the steering rack or that off. I just want to show you how easy it is to do. So now, if you want to twist it up, that's it. So it slots on like that, and then you've got your clips in here. This is the clip for the end of the bellow. So I've no idea why they give you two of them, but they do. So that just clips over the top there like that. Right, so I've just pulled it off so I can show you what I'm doing for underneath the car, so it makes it a little bit easier because you can't see it from outside. So you can see we've just put that rubber ring around the steering rack. That's like the grip for this bellow, and then once you've greased this bellow up, it's a bit difficult to do one-handed. If you give it a twist, there you go, it will go on. you can see. There you go. So that's over the top now, and then you get your clip. The clip is like a CV clip, and then you can just put it over there. So make sure this part of the bellow's over this lip. Don't leave it hanging here. And then just get your clip. It's like a spring clamp that you get on some of the Vauxhall water pipes. Literally just go over the top like that. Spring clamp down. Job done. And then this one is the crimp clamp that goes on the other side of the bellow to the steering rack, but you can undo them. They're like CV clamps, so you can just put it over the top. Then you also get the nut for the inner tie rod. This is the locking nut for the outer tie rod. It's nice that they come in the kit. As I say to you, this kit, everything comes in it. That's what I love it. It's worth it. Cheap kits, none of this comes in it. And the quality is far, far worse. So that's the clamp on the back of the bellow. You can see you just crimp that down with a CV crimp. And that does it nice and tight. With the cheaper, they don't come with them. You have to use cable ties. So it's out of tie rod time. You see these tie rods from the other car. These are massive, heavy duty ball joint ones. Perfect for track cars when you're going to be smashing the curb, abusing the car. So the part number for these, is it on here? Yep. Is that. So if you want them. And yeah, so these are as easy as anything to put on. You just literally thread these on. So whatever you do when you put these on, don't use any Loctite on these threads, because they're going to need to be undone when their tracking's done. You can measure these arms out if you're fitting them, but I'm just going to do them by eye because the tracking place is literally 1 minute away from me. So just going to do them by eye, drive over there slowly, get it tracked properly on a Hunter system. Right, so it's hub time now. So stick some copper grease where the ball joint goes through. Just makes it a little bit easier. Put the ball joint on first. So stick the hub on to that first. And then it goes into the shock. Very easy. When you've put these bushes in here now, make sure that the wishbone goes up nice and freely, no stickiness, because otherwise it's going to feel a bit weird on the road and not going to rebound properly. So you can see, put the ball joint in till the half moon is gone inside there. That way you can get the bolt through, and that way you know it's in. So that's about that sort of length through. And then you can see on the coilover how much camber we can get on the front now. So you can see the elongated hole. This is the one it pivots off. This is the one the camber bolt goes into. So now you can literally lift it up into there, put your camber bolt in. Yeah, so just raise up your wishbone and slot it in. I always put the bottom one in first because it's pivots. So it makes it a lot easier. Come in from the right hand side on these into the left. So the nut's on the left hand side. Same with the camber bolt. You've got your eccentric washer on it. So just push the top in, get your camber bolt through, and you've got another eccentric washer on the other side. That's got to go there. And you've got your locking nut. And then finally, in the Delphi ball joint kit, got a lovely pinch bolt. I always put a little washer on it as well, just saves it locking up. There's loads of room around the back there. You can see how much thread there is. So I just put a nice washer either side. I always find that you can tension bolts up a lot better when you put washers on it. And then a nice locking nut as well. So get your tie rod in into your hub, and then you can start doing everything up. So I like to start from pinch bolt, do the shocks. Obviously the camber is going to be adjusted when you're doing the tracking setup. So just do it in a sort of a rough, as you start turning that, it will pull the top of it in. Do a max camber, drive to the tracking shop and get it done. So you probably see about 6 months ago, I've done an ABS sensor renewal. So I replaced both hubs. So these ones don't need to be changed. These are, as you can see, very new. So just going to put these on straight as they are. So a common theme now, as with everything, always copper grease all your bolts up. It just makes it a million times easier when you undo them. So with this sensor, there's a notch in the hub up in this corner here. Make sure that that sensor lines up with that notch. You can see then the bolts fit nicely, and then it lines up perfectly for the clip. So get your bolts in the back, just do them finger tight, go all the way round. tighten them all up, and then do them up to torque. So get these bolts done up. While we're on the subject, I'm gonna get this edited up so you can watch it while I start cracking on with the rest of the stuff. I've got a lot to do. So I just want to be clear that before anyone says it, before you put that ball joint in, you're going to need to put the drive shaft in. The reason I haven't done that yet is because the drive shafts ain't ready to go in. Just want to do them, rebuild them, put some more grease and that in them. So just make sure before you put that ball joint in, you do put your drive shaft back in. So does anyone need a lighter? Bought a couple for shrink tubing. Right, everything's done up now, all the bolts and everything. So hope you enjoyed that, give you a bit of insight in what you've got to do if you're replacing tie rods or any of the suspension components really. Just giving it a general overhaul. So yeah, smash the like button,